of Code Club here on the Riffomonas YouTube channel. If you are joining me live, I would love it if you would leave a comment telling us where you're from. And it's always great to hear how diverse and how broad geographically of an audience we're getting here. I know many people, most people, are able to watch this as a recording later in their day. So it would be great for everyone to kind of see where you are logging in from. In today's episode, we are going to make another visual from the New York Times. I'm going to do it with a bit of a twist. So in the last couple of weeks, I have been using Positron, which is the new integrated development environment that's put out from Posit, which also makes RStudio. Most of the videos that I generate on this channel have been made with RStudio, and so I've been trying out Positron. As I do use Positron, I talk about what I like about it, or perhaps what I don't like so much about it. And I'm often comparing it back to VS Code, which is Visual Studio Code, which is the same platform as used to build VS Code as Positron. And I figured I would try to use VS Code and kind of show you all how I use it and kind of give you a sense of the similarities and differences of the different methods, right? The different IDEs, as they're called. And so we've got Mike joining in. Thank you, Mike, for joining. Yeah, so again, if you want to see what I'm going to be talking about in these videos, then the secret is to be subscribed to my newsletter. So if you go to riffomonas.org, you can join the mailing list. That will then get you a weekly email where I describe a visualization. And here is the visual we're going to be making today from the New York Times. And I then kind of give a bit of a critique, a bit of kind of my interpretation of the plot, as well as like a 30,000 foot view of how I would go about creating that plot, right? And so this is a timely poll that was put out by the New York Times and Siena poll. And it comes from an article in the New York Times, or a newsletter actually that I get from the New York Times, and I'm sure it's linking back to something else. Let me go ahead and copy and paste the blog post into the chat here, so you all can see that. And then I will also put in the free version. Oh no, it's not letting me put in the free version. That's odd. All right, let's try this again. Well, I'm going to put this in, and I'll let you all see if you can't get there. I think these newsletters are open to anyone to use, and it's, let's see, I think, oh, it's got way too much stuff in here. So let's go ahead. No, that's not happy about that. How do I get this to you all? I think the chat doesn't like having ridiculously long email or long URLs. So let me see what I can do here. Let me see if I can get this in here. Yeah, it's too long too. I'm sorry, I should have had this figured out beforehand. But let me try one more thing. Otherwise, I think what you're going to have to do, I think the best thing for you all to do is to go to the newsletter and then click on this link for New York Times, and that should get you the free version. Their newsletters are free, I'm pretty sure, for anybody to get access to. So sorry about that. I should have noticed that that was a problem. But anyway, like I said, give that a shot, and let me just try one more time. Seeing if I can get the archived version. No, it's not happy. All right, well, see if you can log in or directly get from my newsletter to the New York Times. But anyway, the visual we're going to make today is this one here. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to try something different this week, and I'm going to use VS Code to make the plot, okay? And as I said, I've used RStudio a lot. In the last few episodes, I've used Positron, and whenever I critique Positron, I'm comparing it to RStudio, but ultimately I'm comparing it to VS Code because that's where I do a lot of my day-to-day work for projects that I'm working on for my research. And so it's great to have Marilee from Romania, Rents back from the Netherlands, Julian from Moscow, Russia, awesome, Gabriel from Spain, wonderful, and then we have Lori joining from Canada. So wonderful. You see the diversity and the geographic breadth of people joining in. So it's great to have you all. So the data here are pretty simple, right? There's basically 6 points. There's a December of 23, September of 25, and then we have a response to the question of, do you think Israel is intentionally or unintentionally killing civilians? And so I guess this, as we kind of look at the caption at the bottom here, we see it says, respondents were asked if they thought Israel was taking enough precautions to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza. Those who said Israel was not taking enough precautions were asked if they thought it was intentional or unintentional, right? So really, this title is not quite right, right? It's more of, is Israel taking enough precautions to avoid civilian casualties in Gaza, right? And so then the gray are those people who said they're doing enough. And the red and the orange are people saying that they're not doing enough. And then the follow-up question was, are they being intentional in killing people in Gaza, or are they unintentional deaths, right? Killings. And of course, this is timely because on Monday, as I'm recording this, so today is the 15th, so on the 13th, there was a big deal brokered to release the remaining hostages that were alive and to have a ceasefire. So I don't want to get into the politics. The politics has been a huge issue, clearly in the Middle East, but also in the United States over the last couple of years. And so I thought this would be an interesting plot because it's timely and because it has a few other things going on with it that I thought were interesting, okay? So what do I think is interesting about this? Well, I love slope plots. This is a slope plot. So when you have 2 time points that you're connecting with a line where you're taking some entity and you're measuring it twice, you can draw a line between those points, and that is a slope plot, right? We've got a slope. And so that way then it's fairly easy to interpret the change in that variable or in that population. So in this case, we see that there's been almost a double in the percentage of people who think that Israel is intentionally killing civilians, right? And then for the others, you can see that there's this like downward trajectory for the others. So that's very easy to see and interpret. So I love slope plots. That's one thing. I like how they have the labeling of the points because they don't have a y-axis. They also have text out here in the right-hand margin. And I think the more I think about and do these plots from the media, I realize that they aren't using a legend like we use in science, where we might have a box off to the right where we've got 3 colors and we've got 3 labels. No, they're putting the label right next to the data. And I think that's pretty appealing, right? Because it's much easier to interpret and see, to connect the data to what the data represent. So that's another cool thing. Then the x-axis intrigues me because it's got 2 time points, it's got a line for the axis, and then it's got 2 tick marks. But the labels are not centered on the tick mark. They're also not both left justified or both right justified. One is left, one is right justified. Actually, it's not totally left or right justified, right? Because if it was left justified, the left edge of the D in December would be right under the tick. And if it was right justified, then the right side of the 5 would be right under the right-hand tick mark, okay? And so I thought it was also an interesting aesthetic to have the line with the 2 tick marks going down, but not a line kind of going further out to the right of those labels. Some other things in titles is that we generally would think of this, do you think Israel, as the title, right? But I'm going to argue that this is the subtitle. I will implement this with the subtitle. And so a couple weeks ago, I forget which one it was, we saw a little bit of like a label up at the top. And so we can get that with the tag argument in labs. And then this December versus September will be the title. And then this will be our subtitle. And then we have a caption. And there's something unique about this caption. I don't know if you notice it, and I'm perhaps being a little bit facetious here, it is right justified. And so if you've watched any number of these videos, you know that I am always changing the caption from being right justified to being left justified. And so here is a caption where it is actually already, it's supposed to be right justified. I don't know if this was a mistake or why they did that, but I thought this was interesting, okay? And so yes, Rents also points out the percentages don't add up to 100% for both, they're missing data. And so on the left, that goes to 52 plus 21, 73%. On the right is 65, 91%, right? So I think I went back and looked at the data from Siena a couple weeks ago when this was initially put out. And I think the missing are people who are unsure, who don't know or don't have an opinion that they'd want to wager, right? And so for December of 23, clearly there's a big chunk of people who didn't have an opinion. And perhaps what's happening as we interpret this is that people are going from not having an opinion to thinking that Israel is acting intentionally to kill civilians. But yeah. And so that's another critique that I would have, right? Like, this is sentiment, right? And it's, do you think that they're doing something? And people could have opinions without much information, right? And so in a way, it's good that they're excluding people that don't have an opinion. You may make an argument like, should we rebalance the percentages by removing people that don't have an opinion? But then is it actually responsible to ask people who perhaps don't know anything about the situation, except that there's been a war going on in Israel and Palestine for the last 2 years. And depending on where you get your media from, Palestine's getting a bad rap or Israel's getting a bad rap, right? And so it's been fraught with a lot of politics and media exposure. And so what do we take away from this? I don't know. And again, I don't want to get into the politics of this myself. I thought it was an interesting plot, and so we are going to go ahead and make the plot. And so great to have you, Majed, joining from Saudi Arabia. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to go ahead and recreate this in VS Code. And so I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. And let me get my face out of the way here, if I can remember how to do that. So this is VS Code. Let me open up Positron so you can kind of have a sense of what it looks like. And so hopefully you can see like this toolbar in the left for both VS Code in back and Positron in front are, they look pretty similar, right? And it's kind of a very similar type of layout. Think about this upper left window and things like that. So it's going to be a very similar type of experience, right? And so both Positron and VS Code have different packages that you can install to improve your experience using VS Code. I am going to open up a terminal. And so I can do that with let's see. There we go. So I've got a terminal open over here on the right, and I can open up a new document here on the left. And we get kind of the same type of interface that we had previously with Positron, right? And then in here, in the center where I've got this, we would then have our text editor, right? And so all these windows, as we've seen in previous episodes with Positron, you can move where they go. And this is how I have things set up by default. So I'm going to open up a folder off my desktop that I've called Israel Sentiment. And in there, I already have, as you can kind of see in gray here, the original image that we're going to try to create. And so now I've got that open. And let me move that over a bit. And so you can see the PNG version. Again, like Positron, it's coming up in italics. If I double click on it, it's a regular font. And so this will persist. Yeah. And let me go ahead then and open a new file. And so this is my text editor. I'm going to go ahead and save this as Israel sentiment.r. And so you'll notice that by putting on that .r, it now has the R logo right next to it, and it knows that it's R, right? And so Why that is nice is because if I do something like library, it's going to then color library as though it is our code, right? And so I can do library tidyverse. My fingers aren't quite awake yet this morning. And if I save that, I would like to run that in the terminal, right? And so there's a couple of ways to do that in the terminal with VS Code. So first is to open up the terminal. It opens it up for me in Israel sentiment. I can then do R, and this then launches me into R. And I can then come over to my my text editor, and I can do Command Enter, and that then runs it over in the terminal. Okay. This is how I typically use VS Code. An alternative that might be more friendly to folks is to use the built-in, or not built-in, the added R package, right? And so that would be in this icon over here in the left. If I click on that, that opens up a special window over here on the left for the workspace, right? And so this is like attached namespaces, loaded namespace, global environment. It's got the help built in. So it's a bit more of a IDE type of environment like we see with Positron and RStudio. We also see on the bottom here, R not attached. So if I click on R not attached, this then fires up R, and we then see a lot of other stuff here on the left, right? And like loaded names, attached names. I don't have any variables loaded. So if I then go ahead and do library tidyverse, I get that, and if I now see a variety of packages that have been added as part of the tidyverse. Something else that we might do would be like, say, like x 1 to 100. And again, I'm like you would in RStudio or Positron. If I do Command Enter, it then runs it over in the terminal. Okay. And let me move my face up here. And one of the things you'll notice over like in the global environment then is that you have X, right? And you can do things here like view X, and this then opens up a view window. And so you can't do this view in the other way I was showing you, but if you use the R package, it then will open up this view where if you have a data frame, like if I did like view empty cars, it'll open up that view for that empty cars, right? And you can change it or expand it, whatever, and kind of sort things by the different columns, a lot like what you do in RStudio. I actually don't use view in RStudio, and so that's a feature that I don't really get a whole lot out of, okay? And so, for some reason my mouse has been acting odd lately. So we'll go ahead and close that. And I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this so we have more real estate on the screen here. And like I said, we've already loaded library tidyverse. I am using ggplot2 version 4. And so we'll see if there's some new features from ggplot2 that I can add in. But I'm going to go ahead and create the tibble to represent this data, okay? And so we'll use tribble. And we'll then do, I'll say date, as one column name. And so to make column names within a tribble, you use the tilde. So we'll do date, sentiment, and then I'll do percentage, right? And then the date, we're going to have the two dates. So one is going to be, I'll put 2023. I'm going to put it in quotes. And I guess I could do like, I'm going to leave it simple. By simple, I mean I'm going to use short strings and then build out the more complicated string later, like the DEC period 2023 or September, right? And then sentiment, we've got 3 sentiments, right? So taking enough precautions unintentionally and intentionally. And so I'll say enough, and then I'll go ahead and copy this down a couple times, and then we'll add intentionally, and then unintentionally, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this down again for the 2025 data. Okay. And so now I need to, of course, insert the percentages, right? And so 2023 enough is 30. And then the 2023 unintentionally is 21, and 22 for intentionally. So I said intentionally was 22, right? Okay. So 22 and 21. And then for 2025, doing enough is 25. And then intentionally is 40. I need a comma there. And then for unintentionally, it's 16. Okay. And so we run that, and then we see that we've got our tibble down here in the lower right corner, right, where we've got the date, the sentiment, and the percentage. And I could have entered these by, again, doing DEC period 2023, SCPT period 2023, or unintentionally and intentionally would be easy enough to do. The thing I didn't want to have to type over and over again is this: Israel is taking enough precautions to avoid civilian casualties, right? And so we'll see how we can build out these strings later as we go through the rest of this episode, okay? Cool. So that is our tribble, and we have our data, right? So now we want to go ahead and put this into ggplot, and then we'll do AES. On the x-axis, we're going to put the date. On the y, we're going to put the percentage, right? And then we're going to make a line plot. We're going to use geom_line to connect these lines. We're also going to use geom_point to put the balls on either end. And so to group things, to group those 2 points, we need to use the group aesthetic. So we'll do group equals sentiment, and then color equals sentiment. And then we'll do geom_line. And you'll see that this opens up a PNG version in the middle. And again, this it's catching me a little bit off guard because, again, I'm not used to totally using this. I'm not used to using R in this mode in VS Code. Normally, I'm running it without the R package. So the way that I can perhaps get rid of this is to assign this to a variable that I'll call P, and then we can do ggsave on P, and we'll call it Israel sentiment. I guess I had a hyphen, right? Or let's see, what's this? This is underscore. Israel underscore sentiment dot PNG. Let me go ahead and close that PNG. And then we need the width, which I always make to be 6, and the height I need to figure out, right? And so what I like here is that, I mean, you could do this in VS Code as well, is that I can open up a new terminal. Let me hide my face. So up in the right here, if I click on this plus sign, I can do new terminal. And now I've got 2 windows here. And if I do ls, I see my R script and the PNG. I can do file Israel underscore sentiment PNG. And I see it's 182 or 1082 by 1072. And so to get the same aspect ratio, what I could do would be to say 1082, or let's do 6 divided by 1802 times 1072. And this gets me 5.945, okay? And I'll put that in. And so now this will save my plot as Israel sentiment PNG with the same aspect ratio as the original. Doing that, I can now open up my PNG file. Let's close that. And let me put these tabs next to each other. And we can see this is the New York Times version. This is my version, right? So we have some work to do, but that's the plot, right? And we can just double check that I got the numbers right? 30, 22, 21, 30, 22, 21. And then on the right side, 40, 25, 16, 40, 25, 16. Cool. So let's go ahead and add the other geom, which is the point. And the geom_point will allow us to have the balls, the circles, at the end of our line. So we go geom_point. And now we see we've got those points at the end of the lines, okay? Great. So what should we do first? So let's go ahead and maybe keep adding geoms. So the next geom that we would want to add then are the text labels for the percentages, right? And so normally we might do that with like geom text or geom label. A geom label would get you like a border and a background behind the number. And so that could work, right? One thing I notice about this though is that the gray, the Israel is taking enough precautions to avoid civilian casualties. It's gray, and so it's, I think, meant to kind of fade into the background, and that they really want to focus in on the people who think Israel is not doing enough, right? And so then they're showing us the intentionally, unintentionally, right? And so the gray is also a regular font face, right? Whereas the intentionally and unintentionally are bolded. And so because we want some of the text to be bolded and some not to be bolded, so we could do that with like two geom text calls, right? So one with font face regular, one with font face bold. But in ggtext, which is another package related to ggplot2 and the tidyverse, there is a geom rich text that would allow us to specify the bolding of the text. So we'll go ahead and load geom ggtext. And let's then go ahead and add geom rich text. And we're going to need the label, right? So the label, for now, let's do percentage, right? And yeah, let's see what that gets us. And that got us nothing because object percentage not found. All right. Did I misspell it? Oh, because I didn't put label percentage within an AES statement, right? So I could have put this AES or this label percentage up here within ggplot, within its AES, or I can do it down here within geom rich text. But if I'm mapping a variable, a data column, to an aesthetic, like label, then it has to be within that AES function. And so now we see that we get geom rich text, right? And so that's cool, right? And we see that this looks a lot like what geom label would look like, right? And that's not exactly what we want though, right? But we're getting there. So the number, aside from being bolded or not bolded, also has a percent sign next to it. And you might be looking also on the right and say, well, these numbers also have text off to the right of them. And I guess you could try to do all of it in one go, basically one string for the 40% intentionally, 16% unintentionally. Where that would cause a problem though is here, because I don't know how to get the left side to be vertically center justified and the right side to be, well, all the text to be basically vertically center justified by treating the number different from the text. So I'm going to add in the numbers with the percent sign separate from these labels. So we'll actually do two geom rich text calls to pull off this effect. So we're going to build these labels to add on the percent sign. And I think I'll come back up here and do mutate, and we'll do label text. Let me go ahead and put this on a separate line and pipe that in. And so the label text, then I'm going to use paste, but we're going to treat enough differently from intentionally and unintentionally. And I think this is where the benefit is of having sentiment be a single word, so I don't have to write out the full thing. Because if I do like if else sentiment equals, then like a long string of text, that's just going to be painful, right? So in here, let's do enough. So if it's enough, then we'll do paste 0 with percentage and a percent sign. So that's, if this is true, then we're going to do this. If it's false, then I'm going to copy this paste over. But we are going to put 2 stars to the left of percentage and 2 stars to the right of the percent sign. And those 2 stars will create markdown text, right? And so if I have text surrounded with 1 star, it's going to be italicized. 2 stars will be bolded. Okay. And so now, when we look at this, we should see the red and the blue lines, or the blue and the green lines bolded, the numbers, but they're not. And that is because I created a variable label text, and I'm using label equals percentage down here. So now when I look at this, I see that I've got text that is bolded, and that's great. That's what I wanted. But I'm getting an underline here, and this is a linter telling me that my line should be no longer than 80 characters. This line is 105 characters. So I need to clean this up a bit. And so we'll go ahead and do that very easily. And I'll go ahead and put these 3 arguments basically for if else on 3 separate lines and get rid of that. And so that, well, now it's complaining about something. What is it complaining about? It's saying, let's see, data. So after geom-rich text, let's see. All right, I don't know what it was complaining about, but that went away and nothing's changed. Okay, great. So let's now go ahead and get rid of the border around our label. And so we can do that in geom-rich text. And again, I'm going to put these on separate lines because we're going to have, I think, quite a few arguments that we're going to build out. And so we can do label.r equals, and this is looking for a color. And so I'm going to say NA. And so this should, it's upset with me. Why are you upset with me? Let's look at the help for geom-rich text. Or let me, since I've got it over here, let's open this up. Help pages, and search help topics, and we'll do geom-rich text. And let me get rid of my face. Right, and so it opens this help window in the middle here, and so we can see this. And so label R is, yeah, it's looking for a unit, and I didn't give it a unit. And I wonder if there are other label arguments. Oh, that's the radius. I was thinking that was the thickness. All right, let's see. There's a label color. I think label color is actually what I wanted. So let's go ahead and close that. And minimize that. And so instead of label R, I wanted label color. Cool. And so now the border around the label went away. And then we could also do like fill equals NA. And that's going to get rid of the fill color of the label, right? And so now basically we don't see any type of label around our numbers, okay? Cool. Another thing, though, is that we don't want the numbers sitting right on, we don't want the numbers right on the dots, right? And let's go ahead and we can add a nudge for these different values. And so if we come up here, I'm going to go ahead and do label nudge. Yeah, that'll be good. And so the 2023 enough is over here. And that's the gray 30. So let's move it up. Let's move it up, say 1. The intentionally will move up. That looks like it's a little bit higher, so let's move that up 2. And then the unintentionally is, I believe, below, right? And so let's do -1. And of course, we can adjust these later. And so then for 2025, enough is down, I'll say 1. So -1 is our nudge. Intentionally was up below also, but it's down a little bit more. So I'll say maybe -2. And then unintentionally was down, I'll say 1. Okay, so -1. And so this label nudge will be something that we can use within our AES statement. And this is a new feature from version 4 of ggplot2. So I can do nudge y equals label nudge. Oh no. I think it was, is it y nudge? No, what? All right. Maybe I'm confusing myself. All right, I need to search the help again for geom rich text. And you know what? Geom rich text isn't part of ggplot2. So this might not work. So nudge y. Yeah. All right. Never mind. Forget I said that. So that nudge would have worked with, say, geom text or geom label, but it's not going to work with geom rich text, unfortunately. So instead, we're going to need to do it the old-fashioned way. And so let's go ahead and do that. And so it was nudge y. And so I'm going to break this apart. And so I'll call this D for my data. And then I'll have D come in to make the plot. And then I'll save the plot as that. And nudge y then will be D $% plus D $label nudge. And it's upset because I didn't load this. All right. So now what we see is that we've nudged our data in odd ways. We'll have to fix that. But hopefully we can see that we have nudged our data. All right. So what is it doing? Label nudge, percentage. Oh, right. So I put this as nudge y. And oh, yeah, I don't need to add these together. I'm sorry, I'm probably confusing you. So instead of adding them together, if I wanted to add them together, I could change the y aesthetic. But I want to change the nudge, right? So I could do nudge y equals D $label nudge. And now things are in a much better location, right? And so we're going to be moving things around as we go through here. And so I'm going to hold off on fine-tuning the nudge position. I'm going to take my sweatshirt off here. I'm starting to sweat with all the pressure. So now, so hopefully you can see now that we've got we've changed the vertical position of those numbers. And now what we want to do is think about the horizontal placement, right? And so you think like the left needs to be left justified, and the right, the 2025, needs to be right justified, right? So let's go ahead in here and let's see, we could add another mutate, and let's do label hjust equals if else, and then I'll do date equals 2023. Then we're going to make it left justified, which will be a 0. Otherwise, we'll make it right justified. And then in here, I can do hjust equals D $ label underscore hjust. Okay. And so that then we can see has left and right justified things. And so something that maybe you saw, if, let me come back in here and put these on separate lines. Let me go ahead and comment out. Comment out the label color. We'll be able to see it more easily. Is that there's a border, right, between, there's space between like the 30 and the line, right? And so that's the margin. And so we could come in here and do like label dot, there's padding and margin. And let's try padding. And I think that wants margin. I'm going to do zeros all the way around. And now we can see that that's much tighter, right? And so, again, if we go ahead and what am I doing wrong here? Okay. That then will get rid of the label, the border, all the way around the text. Up and all right, let's zoom back out here. Okay, so that's close, but like the 3 on 30, the left edge of the 3 is overhanging the left edge of the dot, right? And so we can play with the H justification to do that, right? And so, so let's see, that was the justification. So 0 would be left justified, 0.5 would be center justified, and 1 is right justified. So I don't want it centered, but maybe we want like 0.1. And so now you can see that that actually moved over a smidge. And let's go to maybe 0.15. And so we see that's over a little bit more. So I think that's good. And then like on theirs, the point falls right kind of to the left side of the percent sign a smidge. And so here then we could do the same type of deal. Let's try like 0.85. And that went, nope, that was upset with me about something. Yeah, all right. So it probably needs to move to the right a little bit more. So it needs to be a smaller value. So let's try 0.75. And yeah, that's more like what they have with their labeling, okay? So Mike asks, can you explain why you have to use $$ label HJust rather than just label HJust as you are piping in D? So I broke those apart. Yeah, so let's try that. If I do label nudge, this is going to complain, right? And it's complaining and saying label nudge not found. And that's because it would only find label nudge if nudge Y were part of the aesthetics, right? So if I had done like this, then I wouldn't need the $$ label nudge, right? But that's complaining because it doesn't know the nudge Y aesthetic. And so because it doesn't know the nudge Y or the HJust aesthetic, I guess I should double check that it doesn't know the HJust aesthetic. So let's try that too. We'll try, and then again, I wouldn't need the $. So that worked. So it does know the HJust aesthetic. That works. And so maybe that illustrates it, right? That like, it doesn't know nudge Y as an aesthetic, but it does know HJust as an aesthetic. And so if it doesn't know it as an aesthetic and you want to include it, then you would have to use like the $, even though you're piping D in, okay? And so like I was saying, the new version of ggplot2, geom text has nudge Y and nudge X as aesthetics. That's a new feature for geom text. And yeah, so that's the subtle difference, okay? Thank you for asking that. I think that was a good example to highlight. All right, so we've got that. Let's now go ahead and think about adding the text off to the right, yeah? Actually, I'm gonna hold off on doing that because, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. That'll be good, okay. So we're going to do that with another geom rich text, right? Because again, we're gonna have some text that's bolded and some that is a regular font. And so here then we'll do data equals filter D, and then we're going to want the date to equal 2025, right? And so just to show you what this would look like, this is the data from 2025, right? Okay. And the, yeah, so the, and then on the x-axis, what we should know about where it's putting these dates, and so these dates are character strings, right? It's not a numerical. I could have made this a numerical, but I'm going to be adding like the DEC and this SEPT. So it's going to become a string anyway, so I figured I'd just leave it as a string. Is that this is position 1, where 2023 is, and this is position 2, right? So like 2.5 would be over here. So let's do x equals 2.1, and we're going to want the AES, and we'll do label equals, and for now, I'm going to say sentiment, and we'll leave the y as it is, and we can also then add the nudge, right? Because we want the same nudge. All right, so let's try this out. No errors, good. And so, okay, what did it do? So it is, first of all, one thing I see is that it's center justifying on, sorry, it is center justifying the label. So let's deal with that. So that's the HJust. So we want HJust to be 0 to make it left justified as a label. All right, and so now we see that's left justified. We have all the stuff with like the line and the padding and the background. We can worry about that later. I'm not sure why it's not. Oh, right. So I was gonna say, I'm not sure why it's not putting them in the right place. And it's not putting them in the right place because I'm working with the filtered version of the data, right? And so that's not ideal, right? And so I wonder if I could do like data $ label nudge. Nope, it didn't like that. Is it dot? No. Okay, so I was using D, and so this D that I'm using on line 35 is actually this D before it's been filtered, right? So it's kind of janky, but I could do like this and then like pull label nudge. So that didn't give me any errors, and it put the label in the right place, right? Like I said, that's a bit janky. So I think what I would do instead of all this is make a separate data frame that I'll call pretty sentiment. All right. And again, what I'll do is I'll grab this and put that there. So maybe we'll take D, pipe it into filter to get the date 2025, right? That gets us those three. It also gets us the nudge, right? So let's take pretty sentiment, and we'll do data equals pretty sentiment. And then here, I would again use pretty sentiment, pretty sentiment $ label nudge. And I think I've got an extra parenthesis here. Okay. And now when I run that, it's in the right place. So I've swapped out that filter and filter select or filter pull with this pretty sentiment, right? And so I think that will be good because now what I can do is I can go ahead and make a pretty label, right? And we'll do mutate label, and I'm going to make label a factor, and we'll do a factor on label, right? No, on sentiment. No, what am I doing? Yeah, sentiment. And I can then say, let's see, think here. All right, so sentiment, factor, and we can do labels. And so maybe to make it explicit, we could do levels of the order that I had up here would just be enough, would be good enough. So we'll do enough, intentional, and unintentionally, right? And then our labels for those three. And so the enough is why I went down this, right? So Israel is taking enough precautions. And to avoid civilian casualties. Okay. And then intentionally and unintentionally. And I'm going to get the blue squiggle from the linter because it's unhappy that this is long, whatever. I guess I could split it up like this to make the linter happy. So I don't think we saw the linter with positron or RStudio. The linter is making sure that our code is well formatted. And it's got rules for doing that, and you can change the rules and whatnot. Sometimes the linter seems a bit aggressive, like this. Hanging indented should be 24 spaces, but it's 4 spaces. That's wrong. I don't know why it's doing that. Oh, and then here we're missing a parenthesis here, which makes that go away. I don't know. I don't know why it's complaining down here, but yeah, all my parentheses seem to line up. So this mutate is taking the label column and it's turning it into a factor, which we're doing that to change the levels into these labels. Does that make sense? So it should work. No errors, always a good sign, but it's not showing up. Why aren't you showing up? Oh, come on. What does pretty sentiment look like? Let's see. And so we have label and sentiment, and that's probably because I've got sentiment rather than label. I guess I could make this easier. I thought, let's go ahead and, instead of calling it label equals factor, let's do sentiment equals factor. And so now we get this, right? And so we see that we're getting this legend with basically our words off to the right, and our labels are down here, and they're in different colors. And so you know what? I'm gonna get rid of the legend, so I'm not really worried about that. But having these different colors is a pain. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back to what I had, which was to have mutate label equals factor based on sentiment, and then down here I'll do label. And so now if I rerun all this, then that has the same color. The legend overlaps. Life is good. Okay. Hey, Louis, thanks for joining us from Israel. And I really appreciate you joining us and chiming in and saying hi. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and clean up the labels like we did up here with the geom rich text. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab all this stuff with like the label color down through fill and add that. And so now we see that we no longer have that label around it. I feel like the gap between the percentage sign and the text is probably too wide, just because it's going to annoy me. I'm going to maybe make that 2.05, and we'll probably adjust it later. You can see that. No, it didn't bring it in because probably went too quickly in running the code. Seemed to be doing that, and so that tightens that up a bit. One thing I'm noticing though is that I forgot to add the bolding to the intentionally and unintentionally, right? And so let's go ahead and add that. And again, we can do that back up here with this intentionally and unintentionally. All right. And so now we've got the bold. Good. Again, I'm not going to mess with the spacing just yet. All right. So a couple things we see. The first is that Israel is taking, is going off the right side of the screen. We also have, the unintentionally is going off the right side of the screen, and that legend is taking up space. So in the original, Israel is taking was one line, and then it went to separate lines. So what we could do would be to add line breaks, and I'm kind of curious if I look at the help for ggtext. So if you want to look within a package for a function and you don't know what it's called, what I often do, we'll do question mark, ggtext, colon, colon, and if you hit tab, it's not working. Sorry, if I do ggtext without the question mark, geom, and then hit tab, you'll see there's rich text and geom text box. And so I think text box is what I want. So if I look at the help for that, so this is another way to get help, right? We can see the help here. And so this draws boxes. And so let's use this instead of geom rich text, because I think that will get us our wrapping. So geom text box, and it doesn't like what I had done. So let's go the geom text box. Okay. So it didn't like label color or label padding. And so I think that's box padding. And then is there a color? So let's go back down to the aesthetics. And so there's box size, default color of box text and box outline. But I don't want the text to be the same color. Oh, sorry. Box color, color of the box outline. Okay, so let's do that. Box color. Okay, and now let's try that. It works without an error. And now we see that we've got wrapping, but I think we lost some text, right? We lost the enough. And so we can set that with the width that we saw. And I shouldn't be closing the help because I need this, right? For our width. And so I think the default width is 2 inches. So it'll take the unit argument. All right, so let's go ahead and close it anyway. And so then in here, we'll do width unit, and let's do like 40 pt and see what that gets us. So now we can see that the width of our box is more narrow and it's going over more lines, but we want, Israel is taking on one line, enough precautions on another line, right? And so we need to expand that. So let's go up to say 50. And that wasn't enough. Let's go up to say 60. Uh, 80. Oh, going too fast. All right. There we go. And so you can see that we're getting there, right? So if we keep expanding this, let's go up to say 100. Israel is taking enough precautions to avoid civilian casualties. So that's the right wrapping, right? And we can see that this is centered on the 25 like it is over here, right? Cool. So yeah, now we've got all of our geoms here, right? All we have to do is get things formatted, right? We're an hour in and we finally have all the geoms in place, but I think it's cool that we've been using geom rich text from ggtext as well as geom text box from ggtext. So the first thing I'm going to do, well, before I remove this, let's go ahead and change the colors to match the colors that, well, no, let's excuse me. It's annoying me that this text is getting clipped on the right side. So let's go ahead, remove the legend, and get our axes right, okay? So let's go ahead and remove the legend. And so we have several geoms in here, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 geoms. So for each of these, I could do like show legend equals false. And so now what we'll see is that we no longer have the line as part of the legend, but we have the other stuff in there, right? And so that's a pain. So what I'll do instead is do it in the theme. So we'll do theme legend.position equals none. And we now see that we've gotten rid of the legend, right? It removed all of the legends. And what we see already is that it is showing us the full width of the text on the right side there, right? So cool. Nice. Let's go ahead and let's get rid of the y-axis, text, ticks, and title, because that's not there. We'll do that also in theme. So for some reason, it's popping in date. I think that's because of that pop-up. So let's do axis.text.y equals element blank. Axis.ticks.y equals element blank. Okay, so I got rid of that. I'm going to be using the labs function, so maybe I'll set the x and y axis title in labs. So we'll do labs. So it's putting in date because it's trying to be helpful, right? I don't normally have that problem, but anyway, x equals null, y equals null. We'll remove those titles. And so now we can see that we've gotten rid of those, right? Let's go ahead and change the x-axis text. And so we can do that with a scale function. So we'll do scale x discrete, and we'll do breaks of 2023 and 2025, and then labels of what was it? It was December, right? Yep. DEC period and sept period 2025. Oh, that plus goes down a line there. And so now we can see that we've got those dates at the bottom. Okay. Cool, right? And again, this is the reason why I didn't put 2023 and 2025 in as numeric. I guess I could have done it, and I could also change the label, but to me, I don't know. If this is going to appear as text, it makes sense to show it as text, right? I don't know. Your mileage may vary. Let's think now about like the justification. And so again, we saw that like this is kind of left justified and kind of right justified, although it's kind of like the justification on the numbers in our plot. But let's start with H justification. So come down here. That date thing is really annoying. I think that is coming through this R package. I don't normally have that when I don't use the R package. So maybe in another video, I'll do VS Code the way I actually really use it. So anyway, we'll do axis.text.x equals element text. And then let's do hjust. And let's do 0 and 1. I'm not sure that it will let me vectorize it like this. So the 0 and 1 would mean that like the left value will be left justified and the right will be right justified. So it is giving me a warning. Vectorized input to element text is not officially supported. Results may be unexpected or may change in future versions of ggplot2. So we're living on the edge, right? That's okay. If it works, and it works, right? Cool. And so now what I want to do is maybe use the same justification that I used with the numbers and the percent signs up ahead, right? And so back up here, we used 0.15 and 0.75. So let's do 0.15, I forgot the point, and then 0.75. Again, we've got that warning, I won't worry about it. And we have our justification. And I think this one could probably move over a bit, the one on the right for the September. So let's take that up to 0.85. And we can see that that moves over. Okay, cool. We're gaining on it. One thing I would like to do, because we're going to start next working with the titles and the caption, is to change the font family. And so I know, because I've done a lot of these New York Times plots, that the sans serif font, like the December 2023, September 2025, and all these other things, is a Franklin font. And so that's the sans serif font is the Franklin font. And the serif font, like what we have up here, the New York Times Siena poll, and in the caption, that's a serif, is kind of like Domine. Domine and Franklin are both free through Google Fonts. I know that the New York Times uses a special proprietary font for both of these, but this will get us pretty close. So let's go ahead and bring those in. And this is something that I have struggled with Positron, is bringing in fonts and using like Element Markdown or Element Text Box and getting things to look right. I did file an issue on the Positron development issue tracker on GitHub with a minimal example. So hopefully they'll get back to me at some point soon here. All right, so we'll do library, show text, get that loaded. And then we'll do font, add Google, and we'll do Domine. And then I'm going to call that lowercase Domine because I just don't like using the shift key to capitalize things. And then we'll do font, add Google, Libre Franklin is the name of it on Google Fonts. And that is Franklin. Because it's been a while since I've done this, let's do fonts.google.com. And so Google Fonts is a great place to get free open fonts, right? And so a very popular one is Roboto, right? But if I look at like Domine, this is what Domine looks like, right? And if you wanted, we could do something like, let's see, the New York Times Siena poll, right? And so like you could type it in there and then say, does that match, right? And maybe you could, try, if I did like Roboto, remove that feeling. Okay, so what it looks like with Roboto and all the different Roboto fonts, right? And so you can begin to like, is that like, this Roboto serif, does that look like ours, or should I use Domine, right? Like it's just a really powerful tool for getting free fonts if you want to kind of customize the appearance of your figure, okay? So this will then add both of those fonts. It is upset that I misspelled Franklin, all right? I know you all were waiting for me to see that. And then we can do show text opts, and we'll do DPI equals 300, and then show text auto. And both of the ops DPI will get things to be the right resolution. Show text auto will make the fonts and the resolution and everything accessible to us in our plot. So when you're using these types of fonts that you're bringing in, or you're changing from the default font, a font is an aesthetic. And so anywhere that we're using like geom-rich text or text box, we actually need to specify the family. And so we can do family equals Franklin. And actually, you know what? This is another new feature in ggplot2 version 4. So before I would do like, let me do it back down here in the text box because it'll be easier to see the difference, right? So if I do like family equals Franklin, I don't know if you can totally see, but like the font changed, right? It's a little bit different than what we previously had. One way that it's easily noticed is on like the 2 I've seen. So like the default for a 2 comes down and has a bit of a hump as it goes into the horizontal piece. Whereas, let's see, let me copy this. Whereas with the Franklin, it goes more or less straight in. Right? And so you can see that 2 kind of goes straight in as at an angle, right? And so I always find that that's a bit of a pain to do. And so something they've added in ggplot2 version 4 is that I can remove this from here. And I think I showed this last week. But in theme, I can add geom as a new argument. I can do element geom. And then I can do family equals Franklin. And this then will get Franklin to be used for wherever there's a font family aesthetic, it will put in Franklin, right? And so now when I look at this, I don't think that worked. No, it didn't work. So I think maybe what I have to do then is back up here in AES. I can do family equals from theme family. And now they're really making me look bad here. That's right, that's not for the number. So let's add this also for the number up here in this earlier geom rich text. And I think I have too many parentheses here. Okay, good. And so now you'll see that that number goes in. And so, yeah, so I think you can specify the geom down here, and then we can say, basically, put the family into this geom. And admittedly, this is perhaps more typing, right? But the benefit to me, I think, is that I can then change the font, right? Like I could put this back to, I can make this like mono. And so that then will give me a monospaced font. Actually, that's really weird. It's not doing what I thought it would do. That's weird. It's only using the monospace font on the first one. It's not using it on all of them. All right. So I'm learning this with you all, right? And so because that's not doing what I thought it was doing, I'm not going to do that. All right. Well, sorry for that rabbit hole. So instead, what I'll do is what I set out to do initially. So I'll take family and put it in here, and we'll put this as Franklin. All right. I'll have to do some more experimenting with that to kind of figure out what it's actually doing, because I thought from the documentation that if I used it within the element geom, right, like I had element geom here, that it would then use it up here. All right. And so that looks right. The twos look correct, right? And so Mike is asking a good question. Could you put all your removal of borders and the labels in theme using that new system rather than having to repeat it each time? Let's see. So that stuff is all this, right? And this. So I'm going to copy that and comment it out. Well, I think the problem is that it's different argument names in both places. So maybe for fill, it will work because fill is the same aesthetic name in both places. So if I do that, then we see that we've got our fill, right? And if I then do geom equals element geom, fill equals NA, does that turn off the fill? No. That doesn't seem to have done it. So anyway, that's something I'll have to keep experimenting with because it seems like something that would be useful as a way to, like Mike is saying, kind of collect that stuff. Again, just to make our code a bit more simple, right? So, all right, let's make sure we've got what we thought. Wait. All right. Sometimes it seems like I'm running the stuff too quickly and the R can't keep up. And so I'm getting these error messages with about parentheses and stuff. So that's weird. All right. So we're back here. But because I brought in the Franklin font, it now is screwing up the width of my text box. And I'll go ahead and make it wider, but I probably shouldn't make it, I probably shouldn't keep messing with this until I have kind of the final aspect ratio locked in. And so that was down here. Let's go ahead and take it up to say 120 as the width. That's too wide. So let's go to 110. Okay, we'll leave that there. Good. All right. So let's go ahead and, well, I'm looking at the x-axis. Let's see if we can get the x-axis text a bit bigger. And so we have this element text down here for axis text x. And let's do size equals 12. And so that's bigger, okay? And theirs, it's gray. So let's do color equals gray. And so this is something I haven't figured out how to do in positron yet. But if I type the color in quotes, it'll give me, in this case, a swatch showing me the color. Whereas it doesn't do that in positron unless I'm giving it the hexadecimal code. And if I do like 40, it makes it a little bit darker. 30 is even darker. So if I do like 50, it takes it a second to update. Yeah, maybe it could go to gray 70. Right, so now we've got that gray color. That seems okay. Maybe it could be gray 60. Not a big deal. All right, let's look at that tick mark then. And so we'll do that date, axis.ticks. So I think my typing sometimes is too fast for the system. So I'm sure there's a way to change that responsiveness, but we'll see. Axis ticks x. Actually, we want the length. Oh, well, let's do x, yeah. So do element line, color equals gray 60 to make it the same color as the text. Right, and so now it didn't do it. All right. Again, I think I'm hitting things too quickly. We now have those gray tick marks. We want them to be longer. And so we could do axis.ticks.length.x, and we'll do unit. Let's do 10 points. And so now we see we have a longer tick mark, and that's probably too long. So let's take it to say 7. And I think that's more comparable to what they had. Okay. Now what we can do is add the line. So we'll do axis.line.x equals element line. And we'll do color equals gray 60. And so what we see now is that our axis line goes all the way across the bottom of the plot, right? Whereas theirs is trimmed, if you will, to the X and Y position, right? So we want to trim ours. So the way I'm thinking of trimming ours is with, well, we could do it in scale X discrete, right? I could do like limits, or limits C, and then we do like 1 to 2. Maybe it's limit. Nope. Limits. And it's giving me warnings. Or did you mean scale continuous? And so I think what I really mean is to do it within chord Cartesian. So do chord Cartesian xlim 1 to 2, and then add that in. So that way then the error message goes away. But it's being weird. Why is it doing that? Let me make sure that it's working just to start out. So if we do ylim, if we go from like 0 to 40, we go from 0 to 40, but it's still doing this funny business on the bottom. And I wonder if maybe this is a problem. Xlim 1 to 2. So it's, sorry, this should be limits. Right. So it's still giving me that error. And why are you doing that? If I do continuous, so it doesn't complain. But now it's complaining that discrete value is applied to a continuous scale. All right. So let's go ahead, and I made that big song and dance about not having things be numeric if it's for text, and here we are. So let me go ahead and return these to numbers. Hopefully that'll clean up the problem. I've got this here in quotes, this here in quotes. Okay, I think this should work now. Okay, no error messages. Good. And so now it is complaining. Remove 6 rows. And that's because I did 1 or 2, right? And so I want would be like 2023, 2025. All right, there we go. And so now we have the 2023, the 2025, but, right. Actually it didn't warn me, but it's clipping off my labels, right? And so I need to change the X position here I have of 2.05. So that should be like 2025, maybe make it 2028. And that's still going to get clipped off the right side, right? So what I can do, is within chord Cartesian, I can do clip equals off. All right. So it's not clipping it. Oh, what are you doing to me? Let me just double check. I have 2028 there. So I want it outside of the plotting window. I want it to the right. And I think, yeah, so this needs to be within chord Cartesian, right? So I'm going to go ahead and cut that and put that in there within chord Cartesian's x limits. So scale x and scale y continuous, or the scale versions of those functions, will remove any data that falls out of the window before plotting it. Whereas within chord Cartesian, it'll plot the data, but like the limits on the axes will be what the limits on the axes are, right? And so now when we look at this, I'm feeling like a chump here. Let me comment these out real quick. Let's see, if I put these, let's see, if I put these back on, what happens if I make this like 2030? Then it puts it way out here. So it is there. It's just, I put 2028 or 2030 when it should be like 2025.5 maybe. And then my Y, or no, this should be 2025, but this X here should be 2025.5. Okay. And thinking here. I think another problem. So if I put this up to like 2026, or no, not there, down here, 2026. Too fast. Okay, it's there. And so what I need to do is bring it into the left more, and I need to add margin to the right side, okay? Because it's there, as we see, but I'm not giving enough space to the right of the plotting window to show it, right? And so if I make this, again, 2025, because I only want the bottom axis line to go from 2023 to 2025, and let's make this 2025.1, too fast, all right. Now we can begin to see it there, right? And it can probably come in more, but ultimately what I want to do is add to the margin to the right. And so we'll go ahead and do that with plot.margin equals margin. And then we'll do R equals, let's do 100. There we go. And so now we have the text to the right added, and you can see the S is getting clipped because we need to probably move stuff to the left and add space to the right, right? And so we can maybe up this to say 110, and then my X position I had 0.1. Let's make that say 0.05. Very finicky. And so that brings it over, and that's probably too close, right? So I had 0.5 and then 0.1 or 0.1. Let's do like 0.8. And so that looks a bit more like theirs, right? And again, I have a margin off to the right side here, right? Okay, we're gaining on it. Honest. Okay, now let's change the colors of our lines. And we'll do that with another scale. So we'll do scale color manual. Get a plus there. And then we'll do breaks. And we'll do, what? We'll do intentionally, unintentionally, And then the third I put as enough. And I don't have these in the same order, but I don't care because I'm not using the legend, as it were, right? And then those are the breaks, and then the values are going to be the 3 hex codes for these three things, right? So I'll open up my digital color meter, and then for intentionally, I'll hover over here and get this code that pops up for intentionally, and then unintentionally is this orange. Get that. And then the enough. Grab that gray. Plop that in there. And now when we run this, we get their color scheme, right? Cool. Now what we want to do, okay, so now we got their color scheme that matches. And again, I don't worry about the legend because we don't have a legend, and looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and again, my line, axis line I see is still going out beyond the 2023 and 2025. Whereas again, theirs ends at it. So let's, we can bring that in back up here with the chord Cartesian. I do clip equals off and then expand equals false. And so the expand is adding padding around. We saw it like left, right. It's also doing the bottom and top. Oh. And now what I see is that, yes. All right. So now what I see is that I have my line ending, but the right side is getting clipped as well as the top, right? And that's because I set the right margin, but when I set the right margin, that set everything else to 0, right? So if I do like, let's do T equals 5, R equals 110, B equals 5, and L equals 5. I now have those circles showing up, but my D in the December is still getting lopped off. So let's go ahead and take the left up to say 10. Actually, let's make it 10, at least 10 all the way around. And we can go from there. All right. Now we've got all of our stuff where we want it. I think that their line on the axis and on those ticks is a bit narrower than mine. So we'll do axis line X, and I'll do line width equals 0.3. Man. Okay. And so that's thinner, and I think that's good. And then we want to do the same thing on the ticks with line width of 0.3. And so I think that's thinner and more attractive. Let's go ahead and get rid of the background, right? And so then we can do plot.background. Let's do plot.grid first. Element blank to remove. I need a comma here. All right. So that will get rid of, well, that should have gotten rid of the, it's not plot grid, it's panel grid. And I've got that warning message there. Okay. Now the grid lines are gone. I can then do plot or panel.background equals element blank with a comma there. And so that's gone, right? And so now we can see the makings of our plot, right? And now we want to turn to the titles. And this is going longer than I wanted. Last week's was a marathon session. I thank you all that watched. I don't want this to go that long. So I'm going to speed up here a bit, okay? And so then the title is the New York Times Siena poll. And so we'll do title. Actually, no. That's the tag, right? That's the tag. This December versus September is the title. And then the subtitle is Do You Think? right? And I'm going to go ahead and open up the PNG version of this, the file within Preview, because I still haven't figured out how to copy and paste text from an image in VS Code. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this text and plop it in here. And so this will be the tag. The title will be this. Date. Subtitle equals this, right? And then we'll have a caption equals this. And then I'll make that all on one line, okay? And of course the linter is freaking out because I've got very long lines. So if we run all this, ignoring unknown labels, caption. Oh, I've got caption period. All right. There we go. So now we've got our tag, our title, our subtitle, and our caption. Our caption is right justified. But now we need to format it all, right? So the first thing to do would be the tag. And I don't do a lot with tags. And I think the 2 episodes ago was the first time I used tag. So I'm going to come back and look at the help for theme. And if we come down, there's an argument in plot tag position, plot tag location. I remember that it wasn't super intuitive which was the one I wanted. So we'll come down into these list of arguments to plot plot tag, and then tag position. The default is the margin. The default, I should read before I speak. Plot tag location is what I want, and I want it to be on the plot, right? It's by default in the margin. And so we want it to be plot. So let's do plot tag position equals plot. And so now, where'd you go? Oh, it's upset. What did I do? Did I say position? I meant location. All right. I'm getting tired. It's my only excuse. And so now we can see that the tag overlaps with the title, right? But it's no longer hanging out in that far left side, right? Okay. So now what we need to do is adjust the margin on the title. So let's come in here and we'll do plot.title.position. And this doesn't really matter because by default, it aligns the title and the caption and the subtitle to the panel, not the plot. The plot would include like the axis title and text and ticks, whatever. We'll do that. And we'll then do plot.title equals element text. Family equals, nope, that's gonna be right. We'll add in margin. So margin on the top, let's do 20. And let's go from there. We need a comma here. And so that, again, puts the caption up at the top. The title is here. And let me zoom out. All right, so this is at 30%, 50%. Yeah, all right. So let's see, so now that we've got those separated, we can perhaps do some formatting, right? So let's format the tag, and we'll do plot.tag equals element text. We'll do family equals domine, and we'll do face equals bold. Too fast. All right. And so now we've got that nice title or tag. It could be smaller. And so let's drop that down and we'll do size equals 8. So that brings it down. Both of these are at different sizes of magnification. So I'm going to go ahead and close both of the images and reopen them. Just so that I'm doing a better job of comparing apples to apples. And I think the font on that tag could be a bit bigger. It's 8. Let's take that up to say 9. Oh, that's 89. That's not what I wanted. 9. All right. I went too fast. All right. And so probably smaller still. I had 8. Let's do 8.5. And I think that's good. Let's look at this title, then the December, right? And in mine, it's don't think it's using Franklin, right? So I need to add text equals element text family equals Franklin. And then we see we've got like the correct 2, right? And so, but that needs to be gray. And so it appears to be kind of the same gray as what they have at the bottom of the plot. And so I think I was using gray 60. And so I'll use that as well here on plot title. We'll do color equals gray 60. Okay. And it probably needs to be smaller, right? And so I don't know what the size is by default. So let's do size equals 11. It should probably be a smidge bigger, 12. And then let's bring it up to say 15 as the margin. Could probably be 10. Okay, that's not right. Let's put it back to 13 maybe. All right, I think I had 15 before, but for some reason that didn't look right. All right, I think that's pretty good. I'm actually going to open these both in preview because for whatever reason, things are looking weird when I do it here in VS Code, which is fine. So if I put these next to each other, I see I've got perhaps too much margin at the top. So let's shrink down that top margin. So I had that up and plot margin. Let's make that 5. Oh, and too fast. All right. Oh, mine is on the back. Theirs in the front. Okay, so I need to add more margin. Let's do 15. Okay, that lines that up pretty nicely. We can add a little bit more space between the title and the rest of everything. So that was at 15. Let's make that 18. All right. So that looks pretty good. Their font is maybe a little bit darker than mine. I'm not going to worry about it. And maybe we could bring it up just a notch to like 17. All right, that's good. Now we need, do you think Israel is intentionally killing or unintentionally killing civilians? This needs to be bolded, and I want it to wrap. So I'm going to use element text box simple. So we'll do plot. Again, this is the subtitle. Element text box simple. Let's do face equals bold. All right, and so we've got the wrapping, but of course it's doing funny business with the margins. So let's go ahead and to plot subtitle, we'll add the margin, and we'll do, let's do t equals 10, b equals 10. All right, and so it's no longer overlapping, but we need it further down. We also need to be bigger, right? Because normally a subtitle is smaller than the title. And so our title is 12. Let's go ahead and maybe make it size equals 15. And so that looks about the right size. And again, one thing you can do is kind of look at the placement of the title text in relation to everything else. And we're gonna have to increase the size of this text over here eventually anyway. And so maybe if I put these top to bottom like this, I see it could be a bit bigger, right? So I have, my subtitle is 15. Let's make it 16. Oh, too fast. Sometimes when you go too fast, you go slow. All right, so that's a bit better, but I'm noticing that the left margin needs to be bigger. Okay. So margin on the plot, margin left, let's make that say 30. Too far, 25. Let's go back to 22. All right, I'll make it 20 and call that good. Okay, so again, I'm looking at this vertical alignment. So it looks good. And then looking at kind of left to right, the size. And again, the fonts aren't perfect, but they're pretty good. Let's take the subtitle down to say 15. I think that's pretty good. And then again, if we compare it vertically, we need more space above the subtitle to get it down. So plot subtitle top, let's take that to say 14. All right, that brings it down. We could perhaps increase the line height, or let's just bring it down a little bit more. So I think I did 14. I did 14 because that's what my finger actually hit. So let's try 15. Too fast. Okay, that's like bang on. I'm happy with that. Okay, all right. So now let's think about what? Let's think about our caption. So the caption, again, is in Domine font, and it wraps. So we're going to do plot.caption equals element text box simple. We'll do family equals Domine. We'll do color equals gray 40. Get a comma here. And we've got our caption, but the caption now is left justified in element text box simple. What the heck? Thanks, Lori, for joining. Sorry this is going long. And then, okay, caption, we want hjust to be 1 to be right justified. And why aren't you right justifying? Let's look at these arguments here. Hjust of 0.5. Maybe it's halign. There we go. So it's halign, not hjust. And our font is too big. And it actually looks like it's kind of bold, doesn't it? If we do face equals bold. Yeah, I think it is bolded, but we need to shrink the size down, right? So then we'll do size equals 8. Okay, that shrinks it down pretty nicely. But one thing I'm noticing is that it's right justifying it on the panel or the plot, right? But we have a big margin over here. And so what I need to do is actually I need to change the margin on my caption, okay? And so we'll do margin equals margin R, and I'm going to do minus something, right? So my plot margin for the right is 110. So let's go minus 100, right? So that'll basically pull it to the right 100 units, right? And so now we can see that it's right justified more or less on the plot, right? Although we're gonna have to fiddle more with the margin here, but so we want I think like a 20 unit margin on the right. And so let's go to say 90. Too fast. All right, so that's more like it. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. I think that lines up pretty well. I'm not gonna stress about that too much. But we need a margin on the bottom and on the top of our caption, right? So the plot margin on the bottom I have is 10. Let's go ahead and up that to say 20. And so that lines up, I think, pretty well on the bottom here. We need some space on the top of the caption. And so let's then do t equals 30. Too far. Let's go to say 25. That's right. Okay. And now, now the text for our labels needs to get adjusted. And also, I'm noticing that I'm noticing that our lines, our data don't quite line up. And so I assumed that this was starting at 0 on theirs and going up to 40. Maybe what I'll start with is adding space below the subtitle to get our points to line up with each other, right? So like if I grab this point and kind of drag to the right, make a line, you can see that I need to add some more space to mine to separate the subtitle and the data. So we'll come back to subtitle, and I had 10. Let's do 30. And that's too far. So let's do 25. And I think that's right, okay? But, of course, what we notice then is that theirs doesn't seem to be starting at 0, right? Whereas mine is starting at 0. So I need to like remove some space from the bottom of mine. And so my Y limb starts at 0. If I go to like 10, then it went too far down. So let's take it up to say 5. And that's pretty bang on. That's pretty close. Maybe mine is still a little too low. And so maybe it needs to go to like 3. All right, I'm gonna make it 4. I'm gonna leave it there. I think that's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, so my text needs to be bigger to match theirs, right? And so I can't do this with font sizes in geom-rich text because they don't allow you to use font sizes. Again, that's the difference between like geom text and geom-rich text. So let's start with the text box, and I'll go ahead and do, I like to try to organize these a little bit better, but let's do size equals 3. That made it smaller. All right, let's do size equals 5. Doesn't seem to help. Let's try, maybe I didn't do it because I see I've got a null here. So maybe I forgot something. Okay, so that's bigger. But could probably be a little bit bigger. Let's take it up to say 5.5. Oh, and I forgot a comma. Keep doing that. 5.5 comma. And that looks right. Okay. But I need to now change the width of my text boxes, and I need to change the size of the margin. So let's start with the width of the text box. So again, we saw that up here in geom text box, width was 110. Let's take it up to say 130. Not enough. 150. Okay, I think that's right. But I'm noticing my font is... No, I think it's the right size. Maybe a bit too big, or maybe the line spacing is too wide. So let's shrink the line spacing on that, the line height. Let's do line height, line width. Width equals 1.1. Nope, it didn't like line width. All right. What is the argument? Wasn't it line width? No, it didn't like that. Okay, let's look at the help for geom. Let's see, is geom text box. All right. Wonder what height is. Is that the line height? Nope. All right. Maybe I can't play with that. All right, that's a shame. Let me look down in the aesthetics. Yeah, line height. Oh, I was using line width. All right. All right, thanks, Rance, for joining. All right, line height. There we go. Pop that up. I did 1.1. Let's make it 1. Brings it in a little bit. Let's make it say 0.9. That's cool. I feel like my font is still a little bit larger than their font, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. We need to make the margin on the right side more narrow or wider, right? And so let's take this to say 150. And I can go further. Let's do 180. That comes in nicely. And so then let's just kind of stack these on top of each other. Almost done here. Thank you all for your patience and hanging on with me. Hopefully you're getting something out of it. I think that looks good. We see though that like the margin on our title, or subtitle really, and our caption is off, right? And so we're bringing it in 150, as I recall, 180, sorry. So we want the right margin on like our caption to be minus 160. Too fast. All right, so that looks good. And now we need to do the same thing for our subtitle, right? And so then the right, minus 160. That went too far. All right, let's, our subtitle, let's make that minus 100. And that looks pretty right. Albeit somehow we lost some margin at the top. All right. Plot title, margin, top. Let's go 25. Oh, that was a title, not the subtitle. Ah, confusing myself. Okay, the subtitle, margin at the top. Let's make that 25. That's good. These numbers need to get adjusted up, right? And so we had seen with the text box that we got a size of 5.5. And so back up here, we'll do the same thing with size of 5.5. And so those numbers are bigger. I feel like those numbers are too big. I'm going to knock them down to 5, just because, I don't know. I can't hit Command Enter when the other command is still running. All right, so that's good. And I think that these labels need to move to the right just a smidge. Again, that was in Geom text box. Let's take that to 0.1. That's nice. And now we need to adjust the vertical alignment, right? So like this 30 needs to go up. It's currently up 1. It could probably go up 3, if I recall, right? So that's like 3. I'm going to make, this 22 needs to go up. It's at 2. Let's go up to, say, 5. And then this 21 is down 1, but it probably needs to go down 5. And so that was too far on all 3 of those. Okay, let's do 2, 3, and minus 3. Great. I'm going to go 1.5. I think that 22 could probably be like 3.2, and then that negative 3 could probably be minus 2.8. Making up numbers here, and I'm running these things too fast because I'm rushing. All right, so I think that's good. And now for the numbers on the right side, so this is mine on the right, and theirs on the left. Mine needs to come down, and so I currently am going down 1. Let's go down, say 3. I'm going down 2 there. Let's go down, say, 4. And then this is down 1. Let's go down 3 again. And that's pretty good. I probably pulled those down just a little bit too far. So maybe this could be like negative 2.8, negative 2.8. And I'm gonna, I think, call that. Although now noticing, so every time like we move something, something else moves, right? And so I'm now noticing that my thing down here is off, right? And so I need more space above the caption. Again, this stuff wouldn't matter in like your day-to-day work with R. But it is about kind of learning how the different components of theme work and getting things, I don't know, if I say it's good enough, then I feel like I'm not doing the service of going through and trying to really understand how the different components work, if that makes sense. There needs to be a bit of margin above the axis text. So let's do that. Margin equals margin, T equals 10. So let's move that up maybe too far. Let's make it 8. That's good. That font seems a little bit small, but let's see. Axis text X, size 12. Let's do 12.5. I think that's good. And then now these points have been moved up. So I think I did 4 to 40. Let's take that up to say 6 to 40. And I'm going to call that good. All right. Yeah, I'm going to call that good. Let's see. So let me put these side by side. And theirs is on the left, right? And mine is on the right. And I'm I noticed that this, I can't help myself. I need to narrow the width on that element text box. So I have, where was that? Width of 150. If I take that to like 130. All right, I did 150. Let's do 140. There we go. All right. So I'm going to say that's good enough. I feel like my grays don't match their grays perfectly, but whatever, who cares? On the whole, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Again, the fonts aren't exactly the same, but it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this. Sorry, this went over 2 hours. I do try to keep these to under 2 hours, but I appreciate you all hanging out with me and watching me go through these. If you enjoy this type of video, this type of content, please let me know. Leave a comment down below. If you have other visuals out there that you find interesting, even if the topic isn't interesting to you, if you find like the graphic is interesting and you wonder how you might go about implementing that on your own, let me know. Shoot me an email. I'd be happy to do one of these videos in the future. Some of you I know have already asked me a bit about how to do this type of thing. And so let's see. Julian says, can you use ggRepel to adjust spacing between dots and labels in the vertical direction? Mike says he's experimented with that. It's not exactly the same image. So anyway, those are great questions. And what I would encourage you to do, because I'm out of time, I have to go to a meeting, is to take the code that I'm developing here and to try those different types of experiments on your own, right? And for example, something that I would encourage you to play with that I am now noticing is that the left margin for my plot is actually, mine is flush with the titles, right? Whereas theirs is inset a little bit. So I'll probably change that before I post the code. But if you want the code, go down below in the description for today's episode and you will find the code. And you will find, actually you'll find a link to a blog post where you will then find that code. Again, encourage you to play with it, adapt it for your own purposes, and have fun with it. All right. Well, I will stop there and I will look forward to seeing you next time for another episode of Code Club. Take care and please tell your friends what we're doing here.